Maria. With these words, you have the floor.
Well, I'm very pleased to see this room so crowded, and I'm also pleased to know that we are continuing the tradition to visit IPI before taking office. So thank you very much, President Rod Larson, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, it is truly an honor to be here tonight. The International Peace Institute is widely recognized as a leading voice on global peace and security, human rights and sustainable development, and of course the invitation of IPI to speak is deeply appreciated. I would also like to thank President Rod Larson and to express my admiration for his work. President Larson, the commitment, conviction, and principles you have demonstrated on peace and security, both when you were here in government or the United Nations, are clear and appreciated by many. And I thank you for that, Mr. President. Dear friends, I wish to make 3 points this evening. First, on the status of multilateralism. Even in the face of headwinds, I believe it remains the only tried and trusted means by which peace and prosperity can be secured. Second, I would argue that a revitalized United Nations with a dynamic and reliable General Assembly is central to maintaining and strengthening multilateralism. The goals and priorities of my presidency are intended to reinforce this. And thirdly and finally, that leadership and courage of conviction are necessary if we are to take the steps that are needed. Here, I will outline for you how I hope we can dare to do better. On the first point, multilateralism is not an option, but a necessity for survival. In the 70th plus years of UN history has taught us anything, these 70 plus years has taught us anything, is that we are better and better off together. Whether this involves peaceful solutions to conflict and peace building, human rights and women's empowerment, building resilience and promoting inclusion, tackling the AIDS epidemic, addressing the global threat to climate change, the evidence is the same. Only multilateral action brings sustainable results. Action by any other means is piecemeal and will be inevitably ineffective. And yet, while it pains me to say, we must acknowledge that the multilateral system that has guided our efforts for decades is under threat, perhaps more so than it was being since the Cold War. Rejection of global arrangements and crises that have stagnated for far too long in the face of a leadership vacuum have left our populations frustrated and disillusioned. They expect more from us. They expect more from the United Nations. Some perhaps unreasonably expect a quick fix. Others take advantage of it for narrow, short-term gains. The lack of action has also led some amongst us to take a go-it-alone approach. While I welcome proactive involvement from all stakeholders, we must acknowledge that sustainable solutions can only be ensured when all are united behind collective decisions. To use a common phrase, we must have each other's backs on the key issues of our time. Dear friends, if we accept that confidence in multilateralism has eroded, and that this has resulted in the weakening or undermining of the UN system, then the answer is clear. We must do our very best to alter this perception. My friends, there is no better way to do that than to refute the very arguments and criticisms that are thrown against us with clear and compelling action. We must deliver better. Too often our critics point to the UN as an ineffective bureaucracy, unable or unwilling to move under its own weight, plagued by indecision and permanently stuck in gridlock. While there is clear room for improvement, such critics are surely wrong or misinformed. We must overcome these perceptions, and we should do so not by being defensive, but by being efficient and productive, by undermining the very arguments that they would make. The United Nations, created from the ashes of the horrors of the Second World War, have been successful in preventing a third World War. Yet, the conditions that lead to rivalry and conflict have not been successfully banished. Inequality continues to rise. Ongoing conflicts and poor governance have displaced millions of people, resulting in more displaced persons than in the Second World War, and that the impact of climate change has become a factor for displacement and conflict. Therefore, I welcome the UN reform agenda and stand firmly behind member states' efforts to make the organization more effective and relevant for all people. From my part, as President-elect of the UN General Assembly, I intend to provide leadership working with member states to ensure implementation of the agreed commitments. I will continue the best practices of President Lajak in holding regular meetings with the presidents of both the Security Council and ECOSOC, as well as coordination meetings with the Secretary General in the hopes that the UN can act as one. Likewise, I intend to lead the efforts to improve and revitalize the work of the Assembly, to bring the Parliament of Humanity closer to those very people from whom it serves. Dear friends, the UN reform would not be complete if it did not also include efforts to generate supports from the UN General Assembly among global publics. With this in mind, the theme of the upcoming 73rd session is making the United Nations relevant to all people, global leadership and shared responsibilities for peaceful, equitable, and sustainable societies. Under this theme, I have identified 7 priorities that will guide the 73rd session. These 7 priorities are the promotion of gender equality, as it is 23% pay gap persists for women in the workforce, and girls worldwide are still disproportionately denied access to education. Social norms, including the role of boys, continue to limit the fight for gender equality. This is unacceptable. We must consistently and fervently ensure that this topic is ever present in our negotiations and decisions. The second priority is to support the support for migration and refugees. Sadly, this issue has become particularly polarizing over the last decade and risks fueling conflict, as well as a rise in human rights abuses if left unaddressed, are a big challenge. With the upcoming Global Compact on Migration, now is the time for the UN General Assembly to demonstrate leadership and to act decisively. Priority number 3 is about ensuring decent work. With the rise of new technologies and digitization, a concern amongst many of our constituents is the future of work, particularly for youth. A priority during my presidency will be addressing this challenge, as well as ensuring that the benefits of technological innovation are accessible to all. The fourth priority is protecting the environment, environmental action, and has been strongly pointed out by scientists we are losing the battle against climate change. Add to that the challenge of plastics, resource availability, and ecosystem preservation, and there is a clear case to elevate this discussion within the General Assembly. The fifth priority is the support to persons with disabilities. Whether we are discussing the internal structure of the UN General Assembly, both in terms of physical access and communication matters, or the larger international community, it is critical that this historically marginalized group is given the support required. At the same time, channels that must be made available so that their knowledge, experience, and lessons learned can be integrated into policy to ensure that no one is left behind. As societies age and disability becomes a prominent feature of life, we can no more treat disability as an afterthought and not as an integral issue of sustainable development. The rights of persons with disabilities should be at the core of the compliance of the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. Priority number 6 is about the reform process and to support the reform process. As I have already outlined, the UN and the General Assembly can and must adapt to the times. This is not uncommon in any organization, particularly one at the ripe of 73 years old and whose very nature is dependent on changing geopolitical contexts. Trust that I am aware of the immensity of the tasks and ambitions that I have outlined and will be working closely with member states and with the Secretary General on the full range of issues that we would be addressing over the coming months, including the high-level meetings and conferences on global health, climate change, South-South cooperation, and the preparation for the 4-year review process of the implementation of Agenda 2030. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have found my remarks today informative. Through them, I have endeavored to stress the importance of multilateralism as well as reaffirm the UN's central role in ensuring peace and stability and effective cooperation the world requires to leave no one behind. This then brings me to the final point. How can we make this happen? The challenges are understandably immense, the players and stakeholders numerous, yet what is most needed is to move the needle forward is leadership, conviction, and courage to act. In that regard, I have committed myself and my team to dare to do better. In this, I mean that I endeavor to improve upon the delivery, accountability, relevance, and efficiency of the UN General Assembly. This, of course, will not be easy. This will require support from member states, active transparency and engagement with the media, strong communication, and a streamlined approach to how we manage and deal with global issues. Please, take this as a call to action to all member states, to delegates, to staff, to support teams, as well to all stakeholders, including civil society, think tanks like IPI, the private sector, and institutions such as the one that congregates us tonight. Let's us raise the bar on what we can do and change the narrative before it is too late. I hope you will join with us and support our efforts in this regard. And thank you very much for your attention.